The sun hung low over the rolling hills of Willow Creek, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold as Jake Harlan guided his battered Chevy pickup truck down the familiar dirt road toward his workshop. The air carried the crisp scent of pine and the faint hum of crickets, a symphony that had grounded him for years in this quiet corner of rural America. At 38, Jake was a man of simple routines, fixing engines, sipping black coffee, and finding peace on the land his grandfather had worked a century ago. His workshop, a weathered barn filled with the tang of motor oil and the clank of tools, stood at the end of a narrow dirt road that cut through his family's property, the stretch of earth that had been there since the ink dried on the 1923 deed. This road, rutted and lined with wildflowers, was more than a path. It was a lifeline to his livelihood and the symbol of his independence. As Jake rounded the final bend, his foot slammed on the brake, sending a cloud of dust swirling around the truck. His heart thudded to his chest. A shiny steel gate, gleaming like a misplaced city artifact, blocked the road. Its surface bore a bold sign, Willow Creek HOA, members only, no unauthorized access. Jake's hands tightened on the steering wheel, his knuckles whitening. This was his road, his land, free from the clutches of any homeowners association. The HOA's jurisdiction ended half a mile away, where manicured lawns and cookie-cutter houses began. His property, a rugged 10 acres of fields and forest, was a holdout, a piece of history that predated their rules and their meddling. Yet here was this gate, an audacious claim staked on his soil. He stepped out, his work boots crunching against the gravel, and approached the gate. A laminated notice was taped to its frame, printed in officious black font. It declared the road reclassified as community property, requiring residents to register for an access pass. Jake's jaw clenched as he read the words, each one a jab at his autonomy. The HOA had no right, no legal standing to touch this road. His grandfather's stories echoed in his mind, tales of defending this land from developers and bureaucrats, of keeping it free. Jake's pulse quickened, not just with anger, but with a deeper sense of violation. This wasn't just about a gate. It was about someone trying to steal a piece of his legacy. As he stood there, the rumble of an engine broke the evening's calm. A sleek black SUV pulled up on the other side of the gate, its polished surface reflecting the fading sunlight. The driver's door opened, and out stepped Evelyn Crane, the HOA president. Her sharp red blazer and clipped stride screamed authority, and her eyes carried a glint of smug certainty. Jake had crossed paths with her before. Petty complaints about his truck's noise or the unkempt look of his wildflower field. But this was different. She clutched the clipboard, her posture radiating control, as if she owned not just the road but the very air around it. She didn't approach the gate, just stood there, her presence a silent challenge. Jake's fist balled at his sides, but he held his ground, staring her down through the steel bars. This was his land, and no clipboard or gate would change that. The SUV's engine idled as Evelyn turned back to a vehicle, casting one last glance at Jake, her lips curling into a faint, triumphant smirk. She drove off, leaving the gate standing like a sentinel in the dusk. Jake's mind raced. He knew Evelyn's type, people who thrived on power, who pushed until someone pushed back. This gate wasn't just a barrier. It was a declaration of war, a test of his resolve. He worked back to his truck, the weight of the moment settling into his bones. The workshop silhouette loomed against the darkening sky, a reminder of what he stood to lose. He wasn't just fighting for a road. He was fighting for his peace, his heritage, and his right to live unbothered. As he climbed into the driver's seat, the engine's low growl mirrored his determination. This was only the beginning, and Jake Harlan was ready to draw a line in the dirt.
The morning sun crept over the hills of Willow Creek, casting long shadows across Jake Harlan's workshop, where the scent of motor oil and sawdust clung to the air. Jake sat at a cluttered workbench, his calloused hands flipping through a tin box of family documents, the weight of last night's discovery pressing heavily on his mind. The steel gate blocking his private dirt road, brazenly stamped with the Willow Creek HOA logo, was more than an inconvenience. It was an assault on his family's legacy. His grandfather's deed, a brittle sheet of paper from 1923, lay before him, its faded ink outlining the boundaries of his 10-acre property. The dirt road, etched clearly in the survey, was his, an easement untouched by the HOA's reach. Yet Evelyn Crane, the HOA president, had dared to claim it as community property, and Jake's gut told him this was no simple misunderstanding. He sipped black coffee from a chipped mug, his dog Rusty curled at his feet as he studied the deed's fine print. The road had been his family's lifeline for generations, a path to the workshop where Jake fixed engines and honored his grandfather's trade. The HOA's jurisdiction stopped at the edge of the manicured subdivision half a mile away, where Evelyn's pristine lawns and rigid rules held sway. Jake's land, with its wildflowers and weathered barn, was a defiant holdout, free from her control. The notice taped to the gate burned in his memory, a smug assertion of power that made his blood simmer. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. Jake drove his Chevy pickup truck into town, the deed tucked safely in a folder on the passenger seat. The county clerk's office, a squat brick building with creaky floors and the musty smell of old paper, was his first stop. Mrs. Larson, a sharp-eyed clerk who'd known Jake since he was a boy, greeted him with a knowing nod. She'd heard whispers about Evelyn's latest power grab. As Jake explained the gate and the HOA's audacious claim, Mrs. Larson's brow furrowed. She disappeared into the archives, returning with a stack of yellowed surveys and a 1960s plat map. Her finger traced the boundary lines, confirming what Jake already knew. The dirt road was his, clear as day, with no HOA easement or right-of-way. But then she leaned closer, her voice low, and shared a rumor that sent a chill down Jake's spine. Evelyn had been poking around the records, asking about unclaimed easements, likely tied to a developer eyeing the area for a gated community. The gate wasn't just about control, it was about profit. Jake's pulse quickened as he clutched certified copies of the deed and survey, each page a weapon in the fight ahead. Back at his workshop, he found a new HOA letter in his mailbox, this one bolder than the last. It demanded $200 for a community access pass and threatened fines if he didn't comply within a week. The audacity of it made Jake's fists clench, crumpling the paper into a tight ball. This wasn't just about a road anymore. It was about Evelyn trying to squeeze him out, to turn his family's land into a cash cow for her and her cronies. He called Tom, a retired surveyor and old friend, who agreed to meet him at the road. Under the midday sun, they walked the boundary line, Tom's practiced eye spotting survey markers buried under years of dirt and grass. Each rusted stake was a testament to Jake's ownership, proof that Evelyn's gate stood illegally on his soil. As they worked, Jake's mind churned with strategy. The certified documents were a start, but Evelyn's smirk from the night before lingered like a bad taste. She wasn't the type to back down from a single deed or a surveyor's word. Jake needed allies, a plan, and something stronger than anger to beat her at her own game. He thanked Tom, who promised to draft a detailed boundary report, and drove back to the workshop, the folder of documents heavy on the seat beside him. The gate loomed in the distance, its steel glinting like a challenge. Jake's resolve hardened, a fire kindling in his chest. He wasn't just fighting for a road. He was fighting for the principle that no one could steal what was rightfully his. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the wildflower field, Jake knew the next step would take him straight to Evelyn's territory.
The evening air in Willow Creek carried a faint chill as Jake Harlan drove his Chevy pickup toward the Willow Creek HOA clubhouse, a squat building with neatly trimmed hedges and a flagpole that screamed suburban order. The certified deed and survey maps rested on the passenger seat, their weight a quiet reassurance against the storm brewing in Jake's chest. The steel gate, blocking his private dirt road, erected by Evelyn Crane and her HOA cronies, was more than a physical barrier. It was a deliberate challenge to his family's legacy. The documents proved his road was his, untouched by the HOA's authority, but Jake knew proof alone wouldn't stop Evelyn. She thrived on control, her red blazer and clipboard symbols of a petty empire built on intimidation. Tonight, he'd take the fight to her turf, the HOA's monthly meeting where she held court over a room of subdued neighbors.
Jake parked under a flickering streetlight, the clubhouse's windows glowing with fluorescent light that felt out of place in the rural dusk. Inside, rows of folding chairs faced a long table where Evelyn presided, her posture rigid, her eyes scanning the crowd like a hawk. The room smelled of stale coffee and bureaucracy, a stark contrast to the grease and sawdust of Jake's workshop. Neighbors filled the seats, some loyal to Evelyn's rules, others weary of her relentless fines for unapproved mailboxes or unkempt lawns. Jake stood at the back, his flannel shirt and work boots marking him as an outsider in this world of pressed slacks and HOA agendas. He clutched the folder of documents, his pulse steady but fierce, knowing this moment could shift the tide. The meeting droned through mundane topics, landscaping budgets, holiday decorations, until Jake stepped forward, his boots echoing on the linoleum floor. All eyes turned as he placed the deed and survey maps on the table, the papers landing with a soft thud that cut through Evelyn's monologue. He didn't need words. The documents spoke for him, their black ink outlining the truth. His dirt road, his family's easement since 1923, was beyond the HOA's reach. The gate, stamped with their logo, was an illegal trespass on his land. Whispers rippled through the room, a mix of curiosity and unease. Evelyn's face tightened, her lips pressed into a thin line, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of surprise. She recovered quickly, her voice sharp as she dismissed Jake's claims, insisting the road had been reclassified by a recent HOA vote for community access. The lie hung heavy, and Jake's hands clenched, resisting the urge to slam the table. Some neighbors shifted in their seats, their glances darting between Jake and Evelyn. A few, Sarah, a single mom who'd fought the HOA over her kid's lemonade stand, and Old Man Carter, a farmer fed up with Evelyn's rules, nodded subtly, their faces alight with quiet support. Others, cowed by years of fines and letters, stared at the floor, unwilling to challenge the woman who ruled their cul-de-sacs. Evelyn leaned forward, her clipboard a shield, and declared the HOA's right to regulate shared spaces for the community's benefit. The word progress dripped from her lips, a hollow promise that masked her greed. Jake's blood boiled, but he held his ground, his presence a silent vow to fight. He left the documents on the table, a gauntlet thrown, and walked out, the door's creak echoing behind him. Outside, the night air cooled his burning resolve. The clubhouse's glow faded as he climbed into his truck, the folder now lighter, but no less potent. Evelyn's dismissal hadn't shaken him. It had fueled him. He'd seen the cracks in her armor, the wary glances of neighbors, the whispers of dissent. She'd underestimated him, thinking one man couldn't challenge her empire. But Jake wasn't alone. Sarah's nod, Carter's grit, and the documents in his hand were the start of something bigger. As he drove back to his workshop, the gate loomed in the distance, its steel glinting under the stars. A new sign had appeared beside it. Trespassers will be fined. The audacity stoked the fire in Jake's chest. This wasn't just a gate anymore. It was a line in the dirt, and he was ready to defend it.
The morning mist clung to the fields around Jake Harlan's workshop, softening the edges of the wildflower meadow that stretched toward his private dirt road in Willow Creek. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of motor oil and determination. As Jake sat at his workbench, the certified deed and survey maps spread out like battle plans. The steel gate, illegally erected by Evelyn Crane and the Willow Creek HOA, still stood at the end of his road, a mocking symbol of her attempt to claim what was his. The HOA meeting had been a gauntlet thrown, with Jake's documents exposing Evelyn's lie about community access. But her smug dismissal and the new "trespassers will be fined" sign proved she wasn't backing down. Jake knew this fight required more than papers. It needed allies, strategy, and a spark to ignite the community's dormant defiance. He called Tom, the retired surveyor who'd mapped his property line, and invited Sarah, the single mom who'd clashed with the HOA, and Old Man Carter, a grizzled farmer fed up with Evelyn's rules. They gathered in the workshop, the clatter of tools replaced by the rustle of maps and the weight of shared frustration. Sarah shared a chilling rumor.
She'd overheard Evelyn at the local diner, boasting about a developer offering millions to turn Jake's road into the main access for a luxury gated community. The gate wasn't just about control. It was a step toward forcing Jake to sell, a scheme to line Evelyn's pockets while erasing his family's legacy. The revelation hit Jake like a wrench to the gut, but it also sharpened his resolve. This was no longer just about his road. It was about stopping a bully from rewriting Willow Creek's soul. Tom spread out a fresh survey, his gnarled fingers pointing to orange stakes he'd planted along the road, each one a silent testament to Jake's ownership. The markers, buried under years of dirt, confirmed the gate sat squarely on his land, a fact Evelyn couldn't twist. Sarah, her eyes fierce with the memory of HOA fines for her kid's lemonade stand, suggested rallying more neighbors. Many in Willow Creek resented Evelyn's reign, her demands for uniform mailboxes, her fines for unapproved paint colors, but fear had kept them silent. Jake nodded, seeing the potential in a united front. Carter, his weathered face etched with defiance, offered to spread the word among the older farmers, men and women who valued land over bureaucracy. Jake drove to town to meet Marlene, a sharp-tongued lawyer who'd handled disputes for him years ago. Her office smelled of leather and ink, a stark contrast to the grease of his workshop. She reviewed the deed, and Tom's survey, her lips curling into a predatory smile. The HOA's claim was baseless, she confirmed, and the gate was a clear trespass. She drafted a cease-and-desist letter, a legal missile that demanded the gate's removal and threatened action for harassment. Jake felt the weight of the document in his hands, its crisp pages a shield against Evelyn's schemes. On his way back, he stopped at the gate, hammering the letter onto its steel frame under the midday sun. The act felt like planting a flag, a declaration that he wouldn't be bullied. Back at the workshop, Sarah arrived with a list of neighbors willing to stand with Jake. Names like Mrs. Thompson, fined for her rose garden, and young Tim, harassed for his dirt bike, filled the page, a quiet rebellion taking shape. They planned to spread the word discreetly, avoiding Evelyn's spies in the subdivision. Jake walked his property line that evening, checking Tom's stakes, each one a reminder of his grandfather's words, "Land's worth fighting for when it's yours." The gate loomed in the distance, its HOA logo glinting like a taunt. Evelyn's SUV cruised by, slowing just enough for Jake to catch her narrowed eyes, her face a storm cloud of calculation. She knew he was planning something, and he knew she'd strike back harder. The air crackled with the promise of escalation, but Jake felt a new strength, the community's support, the law's backing, and his own unyielding grit. As dusk settled over Willow Creek, the workshop's lights burned late, a beacon of resistance in the quiet night.
The dawn broke over Willow Creek with a fiery glow, casting long shadows across Jake Harlan's workshop, where the scent of grease and determination lingered. The steel gate, illegally planted by Evelyn Crane and the Willow Creek HOA, still blocked his private dirt road, the defiant symbol of her attempt to steal his family's legacy. Jake's fight had grown from a personal stand to a community rebellion, fueled by certified deeds, a surveyor's stakes, and a cease-and-desist letter nailed to the gate. His allies, Sarah, Old Man Carter, and a growing band of neighbors had rallied behind him, their whispers of dissent now a quiet roar. But Evelyn's latest move, a new notice taped to the gate, pushed the conflict to a boiling point. It threatened a lien on Jake's property for non-compliance and demanded $500 for obstructing community access. The audacity of her lies ignited a fire in Jake's chest, and he knew the time for warnings was over. He stood in his workshop, surrounded by the tools of his trade, and eyed his grandfather's old snowplow truck, a rusted beast with a heavy steel blade. It hadn't cleared snow in years, but today it would serve a different purpose. Jake spent the morning bolting the plow to the truck's frame, each turn of the wrench a vow to reclaim his road. The engine roared to life, its deep growl echoing across the wildflower meadow as he drove toward the gate. Neighbors began to gather, drawn by the sound. Sarah with her phone out, recording for evidence. Carter with his arms crossed, his weathered face alight with defiance. And others like Mrs. Thompson and young Tim, their eyes wide with anticipation. The gate loomed ahead, its HOA logo a taunt, but Jake's pulse was steady, his resolve forged in weeks of frustration. He stood in his workshop, surrounded by the tools of his trade, and eyed his grandfather's old snowplow truck, a rusted beast with a heavy steel blade. It hadn't cleared snow in years, but today it would serve a different purpose. Jake spent the morning bolting the plow to the truck's frame, each turn of the wrench a vow to reclaim his road. The engine roared to life, its deep growl echoing across the wildflower meadow as he drove toward the gate. Neighbors began to gather, drawn by the sound. Sarah with her phone out, recording for evidence. Carter with his arms crossed, his weathered face alight with defiance. And others like Mrs. Thompson and young Tim, their eyes wide with anticipation. The gate loomed ahead, its HOA logo a taunt, but Jake's pulse was steady, his resolve forged in weeks of frustration. He positioned the truck, the plow's edge glinting in the sunlight, and inched forward, the blade scraping gravel with a menacing screech. The crowd grew, phones capturing every moment, as the tension thickened like a summer storm. Evelyn's black SUV screeched to a halt on the other side of the gate, her red blazer a stark contrast to the dusty road. She stepped out, her face a mask of fury, clutching her clipboard like a weapon. Jake kept his foot on the gas, the plow creeping closer, pushing a mound of gravel toward the gate's base. The air crackled with defiance, each inch of the truck's advance a challenge to Evelyn's authority. Neighbors murmured, some cheering quietly, their support a lifeline for Jake's courage. Evelyn's eyes darted to the growing crowd, her confidence wavering, but she held her ground, filming the scene as if it were proof of Jake's aggression. The standoff stretched on, the plow's blade now inches from the gate, when a new sound cut through the tension, the wail of a siren. Sheriff Daniels' tan SUV pulled up, its lights flashing lazily. Jake's old high school friend stepped out, his face calm but firm, and approached the gate. He carried Jake's folder of documents, deed, survey, and cease and desist letter, having been briefed by Jake the night before. The sheriff's eyes scanned the scene, landing on the orange survey stakes marking Jake's property line. He turned to Evelyn, his posture unyielding, and held up the deed, its pages a silent rebuke of her claims. The crowd hushed, sensing the tide turning. Evelyn's face flushed, her clipboard trembling in her hands, as the sheriff's presence dismantled her bravado. Jake eased the truck back, the plow still poised, but his point was made. The sheriff waved Evelyn aside, inspecting the gate and the stakes, his authority a quiet force. Jake's heart pounded, not from fear, but from the rush of standing his ground. The crowd's energy surged, their phones still rolling, capturing the moment when Evelyn's scheme began to crumble. She climbed into her SUV, her retreat swift but not silent, the tires spitting gravel as she sped away. Jake parked the plow truck, its blade gleaming like a trophy, and met the eyes of his neighbors, Sarah's nod, Carter's grin, the collective weight of their support. The gate still stood, but its power was broken. As the sun climbed higher, Jake knew this victory was only a step, and Evelyn's next move would be her last desperate grasp at control.
The golden hues of late afternoon bathed Willow Creek, casting a warm glow over Jake Harlan's workshop, where the scent of motor oil mingled with the quiet triumph of a battle nearly won. The steel gate, once a symbol of Evelyn Crane's audacious claim to his private dirt road, no longer held its menacing power. Jake's plow truck standoff, backed by certified deeds and a sheriff's rebuke, had cracked the HOA's facade, rallying neighbors like Sarah and Old Man Carter to his cause.
The community's whispers of dissent had grown into a chorus, fueled by Evelyn's exposed scheme to profit from Jake's road for a developer's luxury estate. Yet Jake knew Evelyn's pride wouldn't let her surrender quietly. As he sat on his porch, Rusty curled at his feet. A new HOA letter arrived, threatening legal action and a permanent ban on his road access. The final battle loomed, and Jake was ready to end it. He drove to town with a folder of documents, deeds, surveys, and Marlene's sharp-tongued letter, each page a testament to his right to the road. Marlene, his sharp-tongued lawyer, had drafted a new weapon, a formal complaint to the county, accusing the HOA of trespassing, harassment, and fraud. Its words were razor-sharp, outlining fines and potential lawsuits if Evelyn persisted. Jake's next stop was Sarah's house, where she handed him a petition signed by dozens of neighbors, Mrs. Thompson, young Tim, and others, fed up with the HOA's overreach. The signatures were a quiet rebellion, a demand to oust Evelyn as president. Jake felt the weight of their trust, a community united not just for his road, but for their own freedom from her tyranny. The town hall, a weathered building with peeling paint and a creaky stage, buzzed with anticipation as residents packed the room for a special meeting. Jake stood at the back, his flannel shirt a contrast to the HOA's board's press suits. Evelyn sat at the front, her red blazer pristine, but her face strained. The cracks in her authority were visible. Jake stepped forward, placing his documents on the council table, their pages fanned out like a battle standard. The complaint detailed the HOA's illegal gate, the fraudulent community access claim, and the developer's scheme, backed by Tom's survey and the county's records. Sarah followed, presenting the petition, its signatures a silent roar of dissent. The room stirred, neighbors nodding, their eyes alight with shared defiance. Evelyn's posture stiffened, her clipboard useless against the weight of evidence. The council, a mix of HOA loyalists and neutral locals, reviewed the documents, their faces hardening as the truth sank in. Jake's road was his, untouched by HOA jurisdiction, and Evelyn's actions were a blatant overstep. Whispers spread about the developer, who'd backed out under legal scrutiny, leaving Evelyn's scheme in tatters. The council deliberated, their decision swift. The HOA was ordered to remove the gate, and Evelyn faced a vote for removal. The room erupted in murmurs as the vote passed, her allies abandoning her, their loyalty crumbling under the community's gaze. Evelyn's face flushed, her empire reduced to a single, impotent glare. Jake returned to his workshop, where he welded a new wooden gate, sturdy and painted with Harlan Land Private in bold black letters. Neighbors helped set the posts, their hands a testament to the community's newfound strength. The old steel gate was gone, hauled away by the county, leaving only Jake's road, clear and quiet under the setting sun. He sat on his porch, a cold beer in hand, Rusty's head resting on his knee. The wildflower meadow stretched before him, untouched by HOA rules, a symbol of his grandfather's legacy. The victory wasn't just about the road, it was about standing tall, about proving that no one could steal what was rightfully his. Neighbors stopped by, sharing stories of their own battles with Evelyn, toasting to a Willow Creek free from her grip. As night fell, the stars reflected on the distant creek, their light a quiet promise of peace. Jake leaned back, the weight of tension weeks agone, replaced by deep contentment. The road, the workshop, the land. They were his again, not just in deed, but in spirit. Evelyn's schemes had taught him the power of community, the strength of knowing your rights, and the grit to fight for both. The dirt road stretched into the darkness, a line drawn in stone, not sand, and Jake knew he'd defend it always.